Bussin' with the, always bussin' with the, bussin' with the boys. Bussin' with the, always bussin' with the, bussin' with the boys. We're staying at home, but we're not alone. We're quarantined with the boys.
Hey,
Hey, how's it going?
let's go. What's up, Charlie? So this is the first ever episode of Quarantine with the Boys. We're sitting here with Charlie McDermott. Am I saying that right?
Yep.
All right. You are a scientist, a behind the scenes guy who is working in close proximity with the people behind the scenes trying to figure out this whole COVID-19 situation. And so I know that when we talked before everything, you and I touched on the phone for about 20 minutes. You said something along the lines of, our news networks are our main, the Foxes, the CNNs, they live off of the fear mongering, the bloodshed, the type of stuff, all the negativity that kind of flows around the world at all times to kind of keep us all in our place. You don't see it the same way. I mean, obviously this is a very serious thing, but there's also a lot of things that are happening behind the scenes that are positive. And so I was wondering if, before we go any further about all that stuff, maybe give us your background a little bit more articulate than I could probably do it. Tell us everything that you've done to kind of get to the point you're at now. And then we can get into the COVID-19 stuff.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thanks for the intro. Really, really happy to be a part of this. This is a lot of fun for me. So we'll keep it loose. I'm not a medical doctor, so I'm not going to give anybody advice about how to handle their health. I'm also not an epidemiologist. I have degrees in biochemistry, another degree in molecular, cellular, developmental biology. I have an MBA, did another program in clinical trial design management. So I basically kept going to school and having kids all the way through and working the whole time. So I've worked in drug discovery as an FDA liaison. I've worked in drug development, business development, mergers, acquisitions, C-level executive, raised hundreds of millions of dollars for drug development projects, taking companies public. Been part of about 5 products that have gone all the way to market. So these were, early stage ideas that then, got approved. So I at this point in my career, I'm CEO of a company that's developing a drug for COVID-19. And I also work sit on a couple boards and also a venture capital advisor helping match money to breakthrough ideas. So my passion is just really finding something that's going to be the next big breakthrough for cancer or whatever. It's like a great job. I mean, I love it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of hard work.
When you say you have 5 things that get to market, is that what you were explaining to me earlier on how hard something is to get all the way to market?
Yeah. If you start an early program in the lab, you have less than a 1% chance of getting to market. Just what you would spend on that program to get something all the way through approval. It's typically 10 years and you can spend over $500 million and it can blow up all along the way. So it's very, very capital intensive business that can completely blow up at any time. You can have some bad side effect. You can lose a patent war. So you gotta so my job now is more to let the really bright scientists do their stuff and work with them, but to really bring in the money and bring in the connections and the partnerships so that they can not run out of money with what they're currently working on. Or we can go in and rescue an old technology people thought didn't work. That was my last company. The head scientist there, they killed the drug. The big company walked away, and we resuscitated it. Now it's approved, and it really made a big impact on some cancer patients' lives. So that was a good story. And we're trying to do it again with this program.
Now, with this program, as opposed to other things, when you're trying to get stuff going and get the investments coming in, people for the money to start flowing in to find these new drugs to help the world, to help cancer and stuff like that, is there kind of this thing kind of going on steroids for you now? Like people are kind of funneling in all kinds of money saying, hey, just do what you can to fix this. Just pushing everything we possibly can to figure out this pandemic. Because this is kind of for all the investors and the scientists and everybody, this has really become like a Super Bowl for you guys. Like, how fast can you get this done? How soon can you find a product that's going to help the people that's been affected so deeply?
Yeah. So this is kind of you bring up a really interesting area that's definitely not getting a lot of attention. So the company I'm working on, the technology we're working on now, and there's a few other people like me, these are really out of favor stuff. Actually, investors didn't really care about acute viral diseases. My friends developed
Really?
a really important diagnostic. They're considered low margin businesses, a lot of that same cost and risk, but you can't make the same long-term business model work on a profit side. You know, you're asking people to put in huge amounts of money with massive risk. There has to be a long-term payout. And these diseases were pandemics and stuff just weren't really on anybody's radar. I mean, look at we weren't really prepared for this, right? We don't have enough face masks. So it was just not a hot area. That's all changed, right? So people are like, my company I had to fund by myself. The diagnostic guy who's now a rock star with his company, I won't say who it is, but you know, investors are lining up now. So it has now become clear that we got away. We had the Ebola scare, we had the SARS scare, we had the MERS scare. We got lucky. Asia didn't get so lucky. That's why some of those countries are ahead on the testing and, you know, getting like Korea, for instance, or Taiwan. So that's going to change in the future. But right now it is a Super Bowl. I mean, yeah, I really feel for all the people in New York, all the people patiently suffering, you know, severe economic hardship, but it's the only time in the history of humanity that everybody stopped doing absolutely everything, not to start a war, but to actually solve an incredibly challenging problem. And that's just amazing. The amount of data, I'm working all the time. I wake up every day and I'll deal with people I've never met before, scientists I've never met. It's just millions and billions of dollars streaming around the world, data, just terabits of data, clinicians sharing how best to treat patients like, you know, that have maybe a respiratory distress syndrome or whatever. Never seen this before, nothing even close.
So you brought up something that you said with Ebola and SARS, we got lucky. And now what's different about COVID-19 and SARS and Ebola that is for us, you know, to have circulated around the world, because planes and trains and automobiles were all going the same way. How did it not spread as fast? Did we have more time to develop some sort of vaccine for all that stuff before? Because no. I mean, as far as me and Will, like me and Will and the viewers that view our show, like I'm a general studies major from the University of Michigan. Great university, not a great degree. Like I'm not well versed in those types of things. So to put those things in layman terms as much as possible would be the best thing for everybody that's involved probably watching.
Yeah, so those diseases were way more dangerous than these. Like, I don't care who you are, you catch those, there's a good chance you can die. And they didn't spread as easily. So they were able to be contained, and you know, there's been some vaccines developed for Ebola, so that's less of a concern right now. And this virus here is a cousin to MERS and SARS, right? Its technical name is SARS-CoV-2, and then people are just causing the disease COVID-19. So what was interesting is this virus has struck a really good balance between infecting you, replicating quickly, and then you being able to infect other people before you really realize you're sick. And then when you're sick, you can still spread it. And, you know, so that allowed it, and it's not that lethal compared to its cousins. So you're running around a lot more, doing a lot more stuff, you know, spring break parties, or people just going to a restaurant and getting coughed on by a waiter, or even just getting, you know, breathed on. And we're still trying to understand how this thing operates. Like, everybody saw the movie Predator, right?
Yeah.
It had all those like defenses, and they're trying to figure out how to fight it. Or Starship Troopers, you know, we've been invaded, so everybody's like going to focus on this. So the first thing we've done is the strategy we're dealing with right now is we got caught with our pants down. It was Pearl Harbor, right? We just weren't ready. So we've gone to a medieval defense playbook, right? So this is low tech stuff, you know, shelter, restrict your movements, social distancing, cover your face. You know, old people used to always have handkerchiefs. This is why. When they coughed into a handkerchief, so they didn't blow stuff as far, you know. And all these things combined will reduce the spread and buy the hospitals time to get ready And so they don't get overwhelmed. Like New York's kind of gotten to that point where they've been a bit overwhelmed. So we're trying to prevent that in other areas. And then now we're developing diagnostics to detect its presence, right? PCR tests tell you how much virus is in your bloodstream. The antibody tests, which are coming online, will tell you if you've been infected and how much immunity you might have. So that's an important tool to get people back to work safely and have some peace of mind. And then we're developing, drugs and vaccines just for around this virus. But we have a lot of other, as we understand the tricks and tools that the virus uses on a molecular basis to cause illness, there are a lot of drugs that hit some of these things already. So those are being repurposed in real time. And if some of those pan out, they can get to patients a lot sooner than the new stuff, because it takes a long time to try and develop drugs from scratch.
Yeah, no doubt. That's wild.
What are, I see here that you said this is the largest, most collaborative, focused effort in human history. What do you mean by that? I see White House. I see all these big names. You're saying they're slashing the red tape, sharing budgets, people, ideas to determine the answers to all these things. Is this, I can just sit at home and watch Fox and CNN all day, but I wouldn't have an idea like this that that the entire world is putting everything aside to focus on this one thing. Can you go into that?
Yeah. So, I'll start with something simple. Think of the Department of Motor Vehicles, right? It's always the same process. It's like the stereotypical, the bureaucracy, right? So when you have the NIH, you have the FDA, you have the process of the White House with lobbyists and all the political fighting, and then you got these other units that the Department of Defense is huge budgets, all this paperwork, red tape, and what I've really seeing firsthand is they're all coordinating, kind of behind the scenes. They're taking in hundreds of applications for new ideas, new projects to fund. They're sharing budgets. They've received about 8 years worth of projects to look at in like just a few weeks. And then they're prioritizing them. They put a big outreach. Hey, tell us what you have in mind, what you got. Things that are direct antivirals that are in the clinic or on the market, those are getting funded and in trials first. Then they're working their way down to earlier sort of out of the box type stuff. And yeah, I mean, it's a lot of it's going to come down to the innovation efforts in the U.S. in terms of technology and finance. There are other companies in other countries doing great things. And then there's the whole private sector, right? There's venture capitalists are starting to really understand the need and starting to put money into the private sector, starting to fund stuff. And then all the countries, all the best practices, China was way ahead of this because they had patients first. So we're learning from all the data they collected. And then Italy's telling us what's happening in their hospitals. So you have the technology development going on, all that collaboration behind the scenes. And then you have all the doctors collaborating about how best to do simple things like when all the nurses and doctors get sick, how do you manage a hospital, right? How do you rotate? When do you bring those people back on? Software companies are going nuts right now trying to create all these outpatient databases, how to manage people from home and not get, usually when you're sick, you're supposed to go to the hospital, right?
Right.
Here, if you're well enough, they would prefer you not interact with the doctor. So they're doing a lot of telemedicine to help manage people, test people, like coming out to their car and testing them. I mean, when's the last time you drove to a doctor's office and they walked out curbside?
Yeah, never.
This has only been a few weeks,
No doubt.
Think about it. I'm amazed by the transformation.
Well, when Taylon's pregnant, that, and I talked to you because she had a cough, something was going on when we first got to California, and you told me go to Scripps right down the road in La Jolla, and we went there and they made us pull off into a parking lot. We waited and they gave us a phone number to call when we got there. We called them. They said, we'll call you when you're ready. We'll tell you what color tent to go to. So we're sitting there waiting 10, 15 minutes. They call us and pull up to the yellow tent. Ladies in there in a full hazmat suit, locks us in, does the nose, sticks a thing damn near all the way up to her brain, swigs that thing up, puts that in a tube, gets her temperature, blood pressure, all the basic stuff, and then totally goes and undoes everything and re-puts on a whole different suit and everything like that. So it's wild the amount of resources that people need. And we were talking on the phone the other day how people are just making masks and hospitals are just taking them because it's like, I mean, something's better than nothing. But this whole thing is not meant to be a whole negative, like, this is the end of the world. This is something that if this is done right from a humane standpoint, like we can become as like not just a nation, but as a whole like world closer and better for types of things like this. Don't you think?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my nephew and his buddies are a bunch of like computer programmers, and they all just started making 3D printing face shields for the hospitals. And they just if you were to walk into a hospital and say, I got there's this terrible virus in your hospital. Here's a face shield us kids designed. We're not even in the field. It would be 10 layers of red tape before they'd let you come in. And they're just like, hey, thanks. My brother walked down the street, saw some lady sewing a mask. My sister, she lives in Chattanooga and she was working with Chattanooga Prep. That's an inner city school. And the teachers are going to the kids' houses with bags of food. And, a bunch of guys out here, surf buddies of mine, we all donated money. And they're like, where did all this money from why is all this money from San Diego helping out our school in the middle of nowhere? And they put Wi-Fi in all the kids' houses, so they could do their online learning. And they got to meet the parents. It's just, as people do the right thing and work closely together and just cut out the bullshit. There's so much red tape our society's wrapped themselves up into. That is a certain amount of red tape is necessary, but a lot of it isn't. And I think people are seeing through that. And then people are creating dynamic business models, like my buddy's diagnostic company. I mean, he's been toiling away while the economy's been booming in obscurity, just always scraping for money. And now he's going to provide potentially a really important tool in this battle.
Yeah. That's wild to see that people all the way across the country are helping out other people. That's awesome. And these nations coming together behind the scenes and making sure things work. This and all in all, like, I mean, this is a catastrophic thing that's happening to the world, but if we handle it the right way and we focus on what's really important, and that's taking care of your brother and your neighbor, I think this could become a positive. It's all like anytime adversity or something like that comes up. Will and I talk about this all the time, and I'm sure you understand this. Like, it's not what happens to you; it's how you handle it once it's happened to you. And so, take it on the chin and kind of moving forward. I think and I know this is going to be a super vague question, but it's something that I'm interested in because you're way smarter than me and you're way more dialed in than I am. What do you see happening in the future? Like in the next calendar year, and I know this is going to change and people are going to be like, well, he was wrong or he was spot on. It doesn't, but it's like how things
in
are
your
going,
best
how
effort of opinion.
Yeah. Because there's people that are my age and people that are younger than me that are saying, you see the Barstool videos of people saying, oh, I self-medicate. Oh, I do this. Like, I don't need to do that, when it's not about, the healthy mid-20s individual. Yeah, there's some people that are, healthy getting sick, but like, it's not about us. It's about the people that have respiratory issues, have, some sort of blood disorder or some sort of lung thing going on, that is older or super young. And it's about taking care of those people, not just thinking about yourself, which took me a little bit to do too, because for me, I was like, I'm a healthy person. I can go out and get this thing. I'll probably be fine, and now like, it's kind of seems like it's evolving a little bit. Where do you see this going in the near future?
Well, first off, I think, your listeners, like Dr. Fauci from the NIH is a great person to listen to. Scott Butler's another guy. He's a former FDA commissioner that's really on top of some of those types of questions. I'm more dealing with how do we manage the immune system and deal with this virus. But, I think you raised some really important points. So on one hand, people call me up and say, hey, I'm looking at this stuff. A lot of people get it. They don't have symptoms. They don't even know they're sick, or they have like a cold or the flu. Why do we shut down the whole freaking economy, right? And I have other people saying, am I going to die? And I'm like, okay, well, let's kind of like get everybody on the same page. So the social distancing, all that kind of stuff, we really need to do that because we don't have it. Everybody doesn't have immunity to this, right? This is kind of a new virus. So we have 350 million people in the United States. If just one person, feels like, oh, well, just 1% die. We have old sick people and whatever. That's 3.5 million people. That's like, think how many Super Bowl stadiums full of people that is. And that's people that pass away, not the 10 times that are in the ICU. So we can't have that, right? And that's why we're doing what we're doing. I think some areas that are really hard hit are going to have really, until the tide turns, you have to have on lockdown to some degree. Other areas, I think when we get the diagnostic testing, where people can get tests really rapidly and it's much more widely available and everybody should be getting lots of tests, then you'll know, okay, I don't have virus anymore. I tested positive on the antibody test, so I have some immunity. I'm like cleared by my doctor. I can go back to work. I can maybe help out grandma who hasn't left her house in 4 months. So there's going to be this kind of easing up in different areas, kind of playing it as we go. I think if there are people that are still really worried about dying, especially with your audience, 170,000 people die in 2017 due to accidental injuries. That's the whole month.
Yeah.
Or a guy walking on the roof or doing stuff. Influenza killed 55,000 people. So we live with this stuff kind of from time to time. And to make clear, this virus is nothing like influenza. It's a much, much bigger deal. It's like, 15 years of really bad influenza all at once. So I don't know if that answers your question, but and then as the drugs come on board that hopefully will start working, then people can be getting treated a lot earlier in the disease because we're going to know when they get sick. Like Mary goes in, she's PCR positive, but then she has 4 people at home and they all feel fine. Put them all on drugs so they don't even have to go through it. And then when the vaccines come on board, then you can have a national vaccine campaign where everybody gets immunity. And that's when we really get on top of things and more back to normal like that.
Mm-hmm.
The time frame, I think it's going to vary place to place to place. And you can always look at countries that have gone through it earlier, like how China's going to get back to work and how they manage that and what works and what doesn't. That can be a good guidepost to what we can see in our future.
Yeah. And we're totally running out of time. We've probably already gone overtime, but with like these countries going back to work right now, and like, I know we're saying May 1st, we're going back and we're getting after this thing and life goes back to normal. Like, do you plan on seeing a spike in these things? Like people that are still going to be sick, we go back out, we start living life the way we used to. And then all of a sudden, do you see like from a social distancing standpoint, kind of ebbs and flows of everything?
Yeah. I mean, a virus doesn't care. Humans can put up all that
Right.
thing. It's just virus math. So we're going to just do whatever we have to as long as it takes. I think you're right though. I think when you do kind of go back and people start traveling more and mixing, you're going to see things pop up. But if we have really good surveillance and some other tools at our disposal, we should be able to manage those. So we're in the early stages. We're in a difficult part because we don't have all the tools. We don't have all the testing as quickly as we want. And we're still driving up the curve of more cases, right? And the goal is to kind of flatten the curve, as they say.
You're working on a drug for COVID-19, right?
Yeah, it's our stuff is really working on driving your immune response. It has a couple other applications as well.
And now are 5 of those on getting the market, or is it just 1 or 2, or how close do you feel like you are, or do you feel like that process is going to be for everybody? How quickly do you see that happening, or how close do you feel like you are?
We're quite a ways away. We're kind of like your next generation. We're really early stage. We just created this molecule.
Gotcha.
Last 2 years, so we're in the early stage. But there's plenty of things that are already in human trials for other things, like other viruses or other diseases. But we know they can disrupt pathways that the virus needs. So those are being studied right now. And then you have some direct antivirals, and then you have other things that are on the market already that can help patients with the kind of inflammation you've been hearing about, what they call the cytokine storm. So it's going to take a lot of different projects to be approved. So it's like there'll be drugs to help patients of a certain type of side effects from the virus, managing their symptoms. There'll be drugs that help people really early on when they're first exposed. There'll be drugs that help people when the virus is replicating really fast. There'll be vaccines that just are the best thing ever because they just prevent the whole thing from starting. That's why vaccines are so, they just make these things like smallpox. If this was smallpox, we'd have a really, really big, really high mortality, much more contagious. Yeah. And the smallpox vaccine got rid of that so far forever, at least that we've ever seen. It hasn't come back. So The ultimate goal is to get to a vaccine at the end of the day. And that's going to just take more time. So these will be things that help us along the way.
You think the football season will happen?
Oh, geez. I honestly, I have no idea. We just need to watch this thing. It's unusual for humans to be at the mercy of nature like this, but we just have to roll with it. You know, some things will happen. They just might happen in the beginning in a different format. You know, you guys maybe all getting tested. I could just speculate and maybe playing first crowd.
Yeah, I know it's all speculation. I'm just curious if you think the April 30th date is going to move, if you think the boys are going to be out there playing football this year.
Yeah, I would be a little open-minded about moving the earlier dates around. I'll leave it at that.
All right, well,
That's
we
wild.
appreciate you, man.
Yeah, Charlie. Is there anything else you think that we didn't hit that we need to hit?
No, I mean, people wonder what they can do. I think just, you know, there's some charities, you know, food pantries, Salvation Army, Meals on Wheels, you know, those are great things. You know, you got to take care of yourself. Newton invented calculus when there was the Black Plague when he was in quarantine. So,
really,
you know, learn guitar, keep yourself busy. Don't watch cable news all day long. You can watch the news, however, but just don't have it droning on all the time in your house.
No question.
I don't even watch the news, honestly. I get all my news like every human being should. Twitter. All right, that way you get it all.
Like every human being should.
You know, hey, you find out more stuff way faster.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, hey, I appreciate you coming on, man. This is cool, especially a last second thing. This is gonna come out what, next week, Will?
Probably this week.
Let's go, baby. I love
That's
it.
what I'm saying. All we're doing, we're dropping this thing on Instagram and YouTube, and we're just quarantining with everybody. Quarantining with the boys.
Quarantine the boys. Keep it awesome. Hey, have you snuck out for some surfs or what?
No comment. No, not recently.
Yeah, we'll cut it out.
Are you 24/7? Are you 24/7? Like, since you're like involved heavily in all this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I do sleep at night, but I have really weird hours because I have.
I know. Hey, Taylor, I called him earlier, and he was like, I was like, you know, what kind of windows of time work best? He's like, I mean, I'm kind of on a global time. He's like, you know, I got to wake up early because I have European time, a call I got to get to. I have an Australian time. I'm just like, what the?
No way.
Yeah.
That's wild.
You know, and it's half the stuff is not even helping my own business or company. It's helping other people connect to other things. And that's how everybody's just really collaborating. And it's exciting. It helps keep my mind off just staring at the wall too. You know, it's good to feel.
Yeah.
No doubt. This stuff is wild, but all right, Charlie, we appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks.
All right, man.
See you, Charlie.
Bye.
Nice to see you, man.